You received a call from an inmate at the Department of Corrections. This call will be recorded and monitored. If you wish to block any future calls of this nature, dial 7 now. To accept this call, press 5 now. To decline this call, hang up.
Well, hello, Mr. Weiwei. How are you doing? Well, I think that's pretty much the standard feeling when you're locked away and your freedom has been taken away from you from an extended period of time. Well, that's good. Yeah, at least you can reach out and talk to people, write letters. So there's a lot of folks out there that have been restricted from that, and that's something that we're definitely fighting for. I don't think they should mess with communication between the outside world and people who are locked up. Oh yeah, that's a little thing I'm looking into now. It still baffles me that the Department of Corrections did not know that they placed a man convicted of assault in the cell with the victim's brother. Oh, yeah, I've discussed this with several people out there, and they're just as shocked. It's just beyond belief. These people keep promoting their that people should follow policy and follow the law, and yet they're continuously violating law, violating policy, their own policy, and their procedure. And it's one of those things that you can fix quite easily. A lot of lives could be saved, and a lot of money could be saved as well if the Department of Corrections would just follow their own policy. Yeah, I know. It's a pretty steep hill that I'll be running up, but it's one of those things where you got to keep it in the public's eye, because their idea is we'll pay a bunch of money to the victim or the victim's family, and then they won't be allowed to talk about it, and then the public won't really hear what's going on, and it will just go away. And that's not my take on it. That's not my philosophy for this whole situation. I just want it to stay out there in public, and I'm going to keep things out in the public as long as I can. And this particular case has pretty much been forgotten, and I'm reviving it. There's things I'm going to just keep bringing back year after year to remind the public, even if it's just 4 or 5 people, that this is a situation that warrants some attention. We can't keep paying our taxes and then having tax money go into settlements that didn't even need to go to court in the first place. And I would really like to see the people involved in this particular situation go to court. I'd like to hear what the Department of Corrections would say in their defense, that people were put into a cell and they actually believed that nothing was going to happen. I mean, in a case like this particular case, it's up to the DOC to make that determination. And if the person goes up and says, this man that you put in the cell with me,
You have 60 seconds remaining.
raped my sister, you can't just say, go back to your cell, everything's going to be okay. This is definitely a situation where you have to at least, look at the best option. And if a person says that, now if they're constantly saying it, I don't like my cellmate, so I'll just tell them that that this person attacked me in
You
the
have
past.
30 seconds remaining.
But this was the first time he goes up and says it. And then in the defense, after he kills the person, is that we didn't know that this man attacked his sister. He told them, and they could have at least looked into it. Okay, we're going to put you in separate cells. We're going to look into this. We'll get back with you. There's a lot that could have been done. Yeah, I know. They take the easy way out.
Thank you for using Inmate Call. Goodbye.
Hello, welcome to AQS Inmate Call, and I am your host, Joel Wilborn. And in this episode, I'd like to discuss a case that pretty much is dying down in the headlines. And it was something that I took on about 4 years ago or so. And I was talking about things that were similar to it. And I just thought, it's time we can bring this back. Just to make sure that those who were involved are being held accountable. Now, just to give you a background on what happened, there was a man. His name is Shane Goldsby. Now, in June of 2020, he went to a cell at Airway Heights Correctional Center in Washington, and he met 70-year-old Robert Munger. Now, Robert Munger was serving a 43-year sentence for child molestation and possession of child pornography. Now, after Shane is talking to Robert, he became convinced that Robert was the same man who raped his underage sister. And of course, Robert's getting all excited about this, I guess. I don't know. But he just starts talking about the rape and giving details, things that Shane would know about and would just be convinced this is the man. And Shane goes over to the authorities and he says, I don't want to be in the cell with this guy. And they just more or less like, you're not supposed to be out here. You need to go through the proper channels. And it was just a classic, we just don't have time for your little deal. Don't bother us. And so Shane comes up and winds up knocking the guy down in the commons area and stomping on him. And eventually Robert Munger dies. Now, when I saw that on the news and heard him saying that he felt that he was set up, he did what he could not to be around this guy, and the guy just got him upset. And during the trial, he was telling the victim's family he apologized to him. And it's not something that everybody wants to do, but let's face it, when you're in a situation like that, let's say you're in prison. You're feeling bad that you're in prison. You don't want to be in prison. You don't like your freedom being taken away. And then you're in a cell with somebody who attacked one of your loved ones. And an attack like that type of violent attack, it's really hard to just let go. And I reached out to this guy just to see what was going on, get his side of the story. I wanted to broadcast this stuff. But as we talked, and he determined that I was one of those officials, or maybe I was undercover trying to get some information, and he just didn't feel comfortable. And that's understandable. There's a few people, when I talk to them, they don't trust. And when you're living a life of crime and you're convicted and you're put in prison, there's not a lot of people you can trust. And so it didn't surprise me that he just ended communication. And as I go back and I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, the DOC, he's claiming that they set him up. And when a person is put in the cell, let's say with the person that they committed a crime with, or if they're put in a cell with a person that they actually victimized. There's certain cellmates you just don't want. And you would think before a person is put in a cell with somebody, there would be some background check on it. Now, when Shane committed the murder, he got just over 24 years, about 25 years. And the Department of Corrections won the case, so they were able to walk away, as Shane said, because they said that they did not know that Robert Munger was the person who raped Shane's sister. And their claim was that the last names were different. Now, I know personally, I know a lot of people who have children out of wedlock and their names are different. And some of them have several children with different people. So there could be a mixed family out there with shared mothers, shared fathers, but they're not sharing their last name. So Shane obviously shared a different last name than his sister. And the DOC said because they didn't connect them, they didn't catch that he was the victim's brother. And that right there just kind of, that was a red flag for me. Because the Department of Corrections should have safety and security of the people inside paramount. People should not be murdered within the prison. And they certainly shouldn't be beat up or their health jeopardized. I think if they had followed their policy and did some research, they would have found out that they put this man in the cell with the victim's brother. And another thing that doesn't sit right with me is that he actually told the officials that this guy had raped his sister. And if I was running the prison, I would separate them, put one maybe in a holding cell. At that time, there was the hole. You could have put it, Shane, since he was complaining, put him in the hole and said, okay, we'll look into this. And as they're looking into it to see his siblings, it's like, oh yes, this sibling is the victim of this individual, and separate them. That was their call. But they just ignored him, and they were able to convince the court that they didn't know, even though he walked up and told them. And that's something that I run across myself. As a prison advocate, I'm constantly telling folks, these people need resources, and you're required by law to provide these for them. Like one incident is where during COVID, they didn't have hand sanitizer in the kitchen or in the cafeteria area. So when the people went to eat their meals, they weren't able to wash their hands with hand sanitizer. I complained, and they provided hand sanitizer. They were saying that the people were drinking it or put it places they shouldn't have been put. I don't know. It was a crazy excuse, but this was COVID. And in 2020, when this incident happened, COVID was an issue as well. And you want to be careful about, putting people in the same proximity as another person where they can catch an illness or something. So there was a lot of caution, a lot of things you needed to be careful about at that time. And when I saw this on the news and I contacted him, I was hoping that I could carry it on further, but it didn't work. And so I contacted him in 2020, and then we parted ways in 2020. And then in 2024, I added him to my Securus email list. And I was planning on maybe reaching out to him again, see if he remembered anything, if he wanted to continue on with the story, or if anything new had happened. I just wanted to do a follow up. Well, what surprised me is he saw my name on his Securus account, and he immediately went into prison advocacy. Now I know I promote myself as a prison advocate, so I'm not sure if he remembered me from 2020 or if he had maybe one of his loved ones or friends look me up and find out that I was a prison advocate. I'm not sure what caused him to talk about that, but he gave a response that was far better than if I had been interviewing him. And then he took me off his Securus, so he obviously doesn't want me contacting him, and I'm going to respect that. I contacted him in 2020, he broke it off. I contacted him again in 2024, he breaks it off. But I got his statement, and so I copied and pasted it onto the AmericanQuittingSociety.org site. So if you want to read that, you're welcome to go to that site and take a look at it. I plugged it into AI, and I asked to give a little narrative so I can put it on a video and give an idea of what he would say if he was speaking to us, and relay his message, because he had a very strong message and he is very adamant about the DOC and how he feels that they're responsible for his 25-year sentence. I don't think he should have gotten that much, because the DOC should have taken some responsibility for this and at least given him a shorter sentence. But it is what it is. So AI created this narrative, and I had it read by AI in this video. So although Shane doesn't speak in the video, and what is written in there is just a synopsis of what he wrote to me, it is his message. It's what he wants us to know. And if he had spoken to me, this is what he would have gotten. So you could go to my YouTube channel and you can watch the video. You can read the narrative from the AI perspective and get an idea of what it is he is telling us about his situation. And I sympathize with him completely. I don't think he was treated well. Now, in the case of Paula Gardner, when she went into prison, they knew full well that she had HPV and was at a high risk for cervical cancer, or like 5 other cancers. And rather than put her on high alert and keep an eye on her, they just threw her into the normal population out there and didn't give her the attention that she needed. So she winds up getting cancer, of course, cervical cancer, and she sues them for they settle for $9.9 million. And they just want everything to be forgotten. And I'm thinking, in 2020, they didn't follow policy. This guy got cheated out of his freedom. And then pretty much at the same time, Paula Gardner is cheated out of her life. And all these DOC people want to do is just pay folks to shut up and make it go away. My job is to keep it in the news until something is done. We can do more than just lock people up or pay people off or pretend it never happened. And I'm beginning to see a lot of that. There was a prison official at Washington State Penitentiary who poisoned Gary Ridgway, put some fentanyl and arsenic in his food, and put Gary in intensive care. So they just kind of push him to another prison, and he's blackmailed by another prison official who says that if you don't pay me $10,000, I will expose this to the news media. And he says, "No, no, no," and he gives him $5,000, but then he disappears. He just packs up his essential stuff and leaves. A person went over to check on him, like, "Why didn't you show up for work? What's going on?" Sees the house fully furnished, everything there, but a few essential items gone. So this is how they want to deal with that. I know this happens a lot, especially the people that nobody really likes. Not a lot of people are big fans of child molesters or serial killers. But we're not supposed to be putting people in there and giving DOC officials a license to kill. Paula Gardner didn't do anything to deserve the death sentence. And giving her money to say, "We're here, take this and don't talk about it," that's not the way you deal with it. You deal with it by preventing it from happening again. And the only way to do that is to constantly knock at the door. And for me, it's like knock, knock, knock. You remember Shane? Knock, knock, knock. Do you remember Gary? Knock, knock, knock. Do you remember Paula? I want them to say, "Yes, go away." And then I can go to the public, you guys, and talk about it. You can read the story on Paula. You can read the story on Shane on the AmericanQuittingSociety.org website. And you can see videos on my YouTube channel. I want everybody to understand that our tax money should not be used to abuse human beings. And we need to get our money's worth out of this. If somebody goes to prison, these things are called correctional centers or correction centers, and they should be going into this correction center and coming out a better person. Shane, in his original email, was saying that bad people go in and they come out badder because the people don't care in there and they're not doing anything. It's almost like they just show up for work to get money and then they go home. If anything happens, they'll just pay the people. When there were some terrorists that the federal government paid the local prisons to bring terrorists in and hold them away from the federal prisons, the terrorists got into a confrontation and attacked some veterans who were locked up. And then the DOC officials just pay people under the table or whatever, or make some kind of little settlement to make it all go away. We're going to do these things, but you need to shut up. Don't talk about it. Us prison reformists, loved ones, we need to get that stuff out there. We need to keep it in the public's eye. And that's what this podcast is about. That's what my mission is, to keep this out there. And although money is nice, I don't want what I consider blood money. I don't want somebody to get hurt or killed or seriously abused and then get this settlement and then I get a part of that. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking to bring this to everybody's attention so that it can be stopped. So that if another person goes in with HPV, high risk for cancer, picks up cancer, we can go back and say, "Do you remember Paula Gardner's case? You remember how you paid her off and told her to be quiet, and then now you're doing this again? What good is this? All we're going to be doing is spending money paying people to be quiet about your mistakes." Somebody somewhere has got to say, "You know what? Why don't we just keep an eye on these folks? People who are at high risk for cancer. Let's assign somebody to them, a nurse or a doctor or maybe even the counselor, just to kind of check on them. Are they getting their proper tests? Are they getting the right diet? Are they seeing the doctors, making their appointments?" Sydney Rhodes, she sends me regular emails now that I post on my Facebook page, the American Quitting Society Facebook page. And she talks about, I went to see the doctor and I didn't get my medication, or they ignored me again. And they're telling her, "Quit complaining. Shut up." And I'm glad she's talking. I'm glad she's sending me these emails. I'm glad this stuff is getting out. And I hope when you're discussing world affairs that maybe something like this comes up. Where's our tax money going? Why are people going to prison and not coming out better people? What can we do to prevent this stuff from getting worse? We already know the crime these folks committed. We know we can sit and talk with them and find out why. Gary Ridgway dead is not as useful to us as Gary Ridgway alive. He could tell us why he did things. He could help us find people who are on the loose right now committing crimes. The information they give us is useful. If you're going to baseball camp, somebody who went to school, learned about baseball, read some books, but never played baseball is less likely to give you good, solid baseball tips than somebody who's actually played the game. And these people committed a crime. They know what it's like to steal a car, to break into a home, to strip a car. And they can tell you how to prevent these things from happening, or they can help you to find the people that are out there. Maybe there's a clique, and they could start naming off people that they know, and the law enforcement can find them. Killing them in the prison, it doesn't help. And then bragging, we did not know that this person raped his sister. I'm surprised they even put him in the cell with anybody. This man should be in a cell by himself. And this was during COVID. So we were releasing a lot of people that were minor. So the prison, you're thinking about if it's overcrowded and you have to fill 2-3 people in a room. Something like that. This guy is not a very popular person. And who knows, he could be the perpetrator rather than the victim. But in this case, he was, just like Gary Ridgway. He was the victim, and just like Paula. Victims. And even another person that's on my website, Greg Brown. He's a victim. The way to stop crime is education. We need to learn as much as we possibly can, and we need to apply it. Simply paying people off, pushing it under the rug, isn't helping anybody. Well, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully, you'll be able to talk with your family members and prevent anybody from committing any crimes. We got to stay on top of this. And a big thing, too, is suicide, crime, something that the people that you think that everything's going okay, and then suddenly you learn in a tragic way that appearances aren't always the truth. So it's best to communicate. Just keep an open line of communication. Well, go out and have yourself a marvelous day and make super fantastic memories for tomorrow.